A Silver-Eyed Girl's Godly Companion by Mr. Unorthodox, Chapter 7. Some of you first years might be wondering as to why you're all instantly called here just after you all arrived from your week-long vacation. Glinda said to the students in front of her. She spun her heel, her back facing the students, and spoke once more. Well, we are going to be here all day to evaluate your skills completely. The way she emphasized the word completely caused some students to murmur and whisper, some to look at her questionably, all of those from the first years. Of course, what do you get when you mix a loud class with a strict teacher? A lashing out. Duh. Enough! Glinda shouted, accompanied by the whip of her riding crop, before collecting herself. As some of you have figured it out, yes, you will be having an all-out spar. No holding back. No pulling your punches short. No stopping until someone wins, or if I say so. Does that mean we do anything to win? A student asked. Yes. You shall use every tool available to you. Exploit any advantages, any skill you have yet to use. Use it. As I've said before, this time no holding back. She spun around, facing the students once more. Well, who would like to go first? A hand rose from the crowd of students promoting Glinda to look at the owner of the limb and would have sighed at the expected situation. Nevertheless, she explained, very well. Team Ruby, come down. Actually, Professor Glinda, can I take this on my own? Ruby requested unsurely, drawing the eye of her classmates, who are now noticing her change in clothing. She was just wearing pants, nothing weird about that. And the weird Faunus accompanying her team. Said Faunus only grinned and waved at them. Glinda would have protested if it weren't for the fact that Ruby was accompanied by the so-called God, who was mentioned to her by Ospen, who also told her that they were wed. The God and Ruby, that is. And despite the fact that her headmaster told her that the God was reasonable, nice even, she was still skeptical, for she hadn't met him herself. Very well, who would want to challenge Miss Rose? Surprisingly or unsurprisingly, Team Cardinal walked from their place towards the arena, all wearing a scowl in their face and an extra accessory. They were also wearing that. Well, take on the witch, Cardinal snarled, hefting his mace from the ground and onto his hands, jade-colored butterfly wings fluttering behind him. His taunt was ignored, however, as the red-headed teen removed her cloak before she started fiddling with a device of some sort, and then something happened. Something, or rather some things, came flying towards Ruby Rose, which Glinda would have intercepted if it weren't for the somewhat calm yet excited look on Ruby's face. One hit her outstretched hand, revealing it to be a plating of some sorts, before clanking and changing, slowly becoming a black and red metal wrist-length gauntlet with a cross design on the palm. The same happened to her other hand, with it having the same design, both red on the top of the hands and fingertips, while black on the palms and fingers, with a white streak running through the middle of the hands. The next pair of plating came, this time attaching itself onto Ruby's elbows. It extended to her wrist and upper arms. It was nearly completely red in color, with only the joints and a streak on each arm, black and white respectively, with the white streaks connecting to the ones in the gauntlets. The next ones connected to her legs before it slowly encompassed her lower limbs, having a resemblance in design with the arms. Torso plating then came next, before it morphed to cover her neck, back, and abdomen. It bore the color red and white lines along it, with her personal emblem in the middle of her chest in black. Ruby then cut a piece before putting it on her head, revealing it to be a headgear with a visor. There stood Ruby Rose, body covered in metal the color of red, with white lines running across some parts and black-colored joints. Only a part of her face and scalp were free of any attachment. Her body's covered in a sleek suit of armor. She then whistled, and her cloak suddenly attached itself to her neck. That's why she put it down neatly, Glinda thought, ignoring the whispers all around her. Were those magnets? Come here, sweetie, Ruby suddenly called out in a loving voice before everyone witnessed something stranger. A small, pale girl flew from the crowd, though she wasn't a human nor a faunus. She was a gynoid. Upon landing her eyes on the girl, it glowed with pride and joy. Skin paler than snow, bluish silver eyes, a crimson hair that falls down to her shoulders in the style of a flower, three whisker marks on each cheek, and a red and silver Gothic Lolita dress. The little girl looked to be a 6-year-old, though even then she imitated an unhealthy beauty, that chilling charm one would associate with a vampire. She looked so real. Glinda narrowed her eyes in suspicion. That's an advanced form of technology. How did Miss Rose obtain it? Yes, Mom, the little girl asked, and possibly Ruby's eyes glowed brighter. You're gonna help Mommy play with these boys, sweetie, Ruby replied with a smile. Those butterfly men? The girl asked, receiving a nod and a smile from Ruby. And you might be wondering when that butterfly man thing happened, right? Well, please don't pull on my ears, a timid female voice said. Ha! Look at her being all meek and such. I bet it's only an act to lure in boys towards her. A brash voice resounded. I don't, the girl said demurely, which only caused her assailants to laugh at her and pull harder on her rabbit ears. I hate people like them, Naruto said from another table. He was currently invisible to everyone bar Team Ruby, who were accompanying him. They're scum, belittling people like that. No one commented on his words, though what they were seeing invoked different reactions through each of the girls. Yang clenched her fist and looked down. Weeds closed her eyes with furrowed brows. Blake looked like she was struggling from letting a snarl form on her face. And lastly, Ruby looked calmly furious before giving him a look that practically says, do as you will. Naruto's eyes caught this and widened slightly before shining in sinful delight. Let's just say that Naruto loved irony and that Team Cardinal now knows the burden of being a faunist. Not that they cared. What they only cared for was, let's get this over with. Maybe if we beat her into the ground hard enough, we'll turn back from being this disgusting species, turning back into a human. Many faunist supporters and faunists furrowed their brows in disdain, including Ruby. Come on, sweetie, let's show them why we don't like meanies. The girl nodded enthusiastically before transforming into something familiar, yet not so at the same time. Instead of a large scythe, she formed two smaller ones from her arms and attached herself to Ruby's own, while her transforming legs attached to Ruby's shoulders, forming two guns. Her remaining body parts, her head, torso, and waist, attached to her mother's waist, forming a metallic battle skirt, and to her, Ruby's body and limbs forming additional armor. Was that was that girl her weapon? Glinda thought in surprise. Let's see if you can keep up, Ruby said before disappearing in a blitz of blades, metal, and rose petals among the students. Was that? Ren asked, purposely letting his question hang. Awesome. Hell yeah, it is, Nora voiced from her position. That was Ruby's scythe, yes, we said, completely unfazed, as were her teammates. It's amazing, no? Very, Coco, a second-year student, said. Though how did she do that? And when? Where she found those ideas was thanks to that guy over there, Yang said, pointing to Naruto, who was smiling cheekily while watching the one-sided fight. Every student near them looked at the young man with wide eyes, though they were ignored as Yang continued. It happened when we were on our vacation. How? Let's just say it involved a funny story. Knock, knock, knock. Ruby, open the door. You and Naruto have been in there for 3 days now. Go away, Yang. We're making a baby. Knock, knock, knock. Open the damn door. One with a few misunderstandings on my part, she added with a sheepish laugh. And it's over. Naruto voiced from his spot, causing everyone to look at the arena floor, and he was right. It was over. Quite in a splendid manner, in fact. There was Ruby Rose standing with her hands on her hips, Crescent Rose detaching herself from her mother, informing herself, and upon completion she copied her mother's pose, though hers was done with her nose high in the air. Awesome, Nora whispered with wide excited eyes. Does everyone in your team have a suit like that? John felt the need to ask. Oh, he was also sitting unnecessarily close to Pyra. Is something happening between the two of them? Yang thought with a raised eyebrow before focusing back to her sister. Their life, not mine. Only Ruby. Everyone released the relief breath at Blake's answer, failing to notice the twinkle in her eyes. When Ruby rose, Glinda announced, eliciting applaud from a couple of students. Next combatant, make your way down. She wasn't finished because Yang leaped from her position and dropped next to Ruby, who Yang, proceeded to high five. Good job, sis. You too, little Rose. Thanks. Thank you. The mother and daughter chimed respectively before making their way to Team Ruby's position. I bet that I'll have an aneurysm when he hears about Crescent. Not sure about Mom, though, Yang muttered to herself before pointing to a random second-year team, making them comply, what with their pride on the line. Yang then faced Glinda and asked, It's a no-holding-back type of spar, right? Any skill can be used? Though afraid of the outcome, Glinda nonetheless answered, Yes, that'd be correct. Miss Xiaolong, what are you gonna do? One of her opponents, a female, asked rhetorically. Bore us into submission with your shitty puns? Her teammates laughed at that. Yang only smiled a feral smile, which is further pronounced by her suddenly sharp teeth and the red scales growing on her cheeks, arms, and legs. I've been waiting to test this power on other people for Shao Long. And with that, she pounced. Go on, T. Go Yang. Break a leg. Or four. Crescent, Ruby, and Nora cheered on as the people around them chatted. Are those scales? Power asked in disbelief, and with wide eyes as she looked at the red, glinting skin of Yang through the screen that showed the combatants, aura levels, which also showed a close-up of the fighters. Dragon scales, actually, Blake candidly said. She's gonna go overboard for the jab at the puns. Iron Dragon, Iron Fist. Just be thankful it's not us this time, Ruby said, earning nods from her teammates. She then suddenly shivered. Do you guys feel that? Naruto sighed with a hand running through his hair. Menma, yes, dearest brother, the aforementioned girl who suddenly appeared at his side asked with adoration and love in her eyes. Behind her were her three teammates, Cinderfall, the the woman with a burning passion, Emerald Zustre, the pickpocketing gem of misdirection and laugh, Neapolitan Tuscups, the colorful lady of silent mockery and illusions. With that, they made Team Amethyst, or Team MTSC for short, each of them wearing a beacon uniform. Stop pulsating your chakra, you're wasting it, Naruto said, looking at his sister with blank eyes before continuing. And don't glare at my wife, that's rude and mean. But Menun was about to complain, but Naruto interrupted her by flicking her forehead affectionately. Flustered by the sudden contact with her maker, she let out a dream. Yes, brother. Just behave, okay? Naruto told her, of which she nodded to with a dreamy smile. He then turned to pay attention back to the fight with Yang. Is it hot in here or is it just me? Yang asked, arms and hair blazing. She then cocked her fist back before launching a fireball at her opponents. What's wrong? Why aren't you firing back? She blocked off a slash with her arms, surprising her assailant before suddenly gaining more scales and claws. Is that it? 'Cause if it is, then I better start dragging on this fight longer to keep it fun. Minutes later, victory, Yang Xiaolong. Glinda's voice resonated. She fought while dishing out puns, Coco started. Given they were horrible, but she's good. Please don't let her hear that. She'll get a swollen pride if she does, Ruby said. Yang's coming up, John said, rubbing his arm. These girls are monsters, he thought upon seeing the sorry state Yang's opponents were in, while remembering the previous match. I guess I can't help my partners have all the fun. Blake stood and walked towards the arena floor, carrying a small bundle of cloth in her arms. Oh, what's that Yang is carrying? Is that a magic carpet? Nora asked with metaphorical stars in her eyes. Wait and find out, we said, eager to see her teammates' performance. Down at the arena, third match of the day, Blake Belladonna of Team Ruby versus Team Tar. Glinda began looking the combatants in the eyes before whipping her riding crop. Begin! Everyone jumped backwards, Team Tar eyeing their opponent and the bundle she's carrying. Let's see if you can catch. Blake began unfolding the cloth before putting it on her shoulders, disappearing as she did, a silent shadow. With Team Ruby, Juniper, and Coffee, a mechanical suit, dragonic powers, and an invisibility cloak. Nora muttered before giggling madly. You're all like superheroes. Ooh, maybe with my hammer I could join. Then I would be Thunder Nora, or better yet, Thora, the Lady of Lightning and Mistress of Pancakes. Bow down before the might of Manhild. So, Whis, what should we expect from you? Asked Ran, blocking out his partner's ranting, eyes still glued to the stumbling and fumbling of Team Tar, looking as if they were headless chickens. All Whis offered was a small smirk. Back with Blake. Blake, disembodied voice echoed throughout the arena. It seems that you can't catch a shadow. So remove that cloak and say that to my face. One of them, a guy shouted before promptly falling flat on his face. And the space where he stood at was now occupied by Blake, who was wearing her cloak inside out while holding a few very thin needles in between her fingers. Toxin that knocks out the reception in a matter of seconds. Nothing more. She explained to the worried-looking professor. Seeing one of theirs knocked out, the three promptly dashed towards the black-haired beauty. One attempted to shoot Blake with her gun. The other made an attempt at stabbing her with his spike, while the last one tried to hit her with his staff. As the bullet neared Blake, she merely activated her semblance and replaced herself with an ice clone, that of which shattered upon being shot, prompting the two would-be attackers to shield their eyes as instinct dictated. A chance, Blake thought, before replacing herself with a shadow clone to avoid another hail of bullets. Appearing next to the staff user and slashing at the still recovering person with her sword, Gamble Shroud. The staff user then collapsed, having used all his aura to shield himself from the assault earlier on. And then there were two, Blake muttered ominously, cloak fluttering and eyes glinting. Let's see who lasts longer. With that, she began her assault of silent steps and poisonous misdirections. She uses needles, asked a bewildered Yatsuhishi, the gentle giant of Team Coffee. That takes quite the skill, he added praisingly. She seems new to that form of combat, though, so I'd assume that she'd only learned it recently. So that begs that question added to who taught her. The seemingly blind, seemingly mute blade user of Team Coffee Fox stated. That would be Lord Naruto, we said, pointing to the red-eyed, ten-tailed, horned blonde who was currently tickling the little gynoid's feet, making her giggle while Ruby was dropping herself over Naruto while laughing quietly. How can she even feel she's being tickled? Most thought to themselves as they watched the trio play. Lord, Coco voiced out before asking another question. Wait, what's his relationship with Team Ruby anyway? Weiss looked unsure whether to answer or not as she looked at the family of trio, who was now joined by Yang, who was filming the little girl. Naruto, who heard the not-so-quiet conversation, gave Whis a thumbs up. Seeing the gesture, Whis calmly explained who that person was, what he is, and what his relationship to Team Ruby and Juniper is. Needless to say, they were either skeptical, nervous, or both up until the fourth battle. Blake Belladonna is the victor, Glinda announced. Glinda didn't even need to call down a student, knowing already who would take the stand as the Snee Harris was already halfway to the platform. I wonder what she can do, she thought curiously. Weiss, meanwhile, was walking gracefully towards the arena floor, hands on the front of her skirt and a small tug upwards on her lips. Whether it was a smirk or a grin was debatable. I challenged Team Juniper, she declared softly. Said team only widened their eyes before making their way towards the Harris. Once all of them were in the arena, the professor looked at both teams. Begin! Not a moment later, Team Juniper readied themselves, weapons drawn and semblance ready to activate. Their tense form only caused Whis to smirk lightly, which spurred the others on. John activated his semblance, iron skin, before looking at Para and nodding. Para nodded back at the now running John before activating her own semblance and using it on the running who now jumped Metal Blonde and turned him into a sword and shield wielding projectile. While that was happening, Ren and Nora were preparing their own combination attack. Ren took out his weapons and started to fire electricity-infused dust bullets at Nora, who began to glow pink and cackled along with her lightning. More! Give me more! Nora moaned before turning to Whis with a feral grin and charged on ahead with John. Manhild and herself, sparkling pink sparkles all the while. Ren and Pyra, having done their initial parts, moved closer to assist their teammates, guns blazing quite literally, only for Whis to seemingly teleport to the other side, dodging all the attacks aimed at her. A teleportation device, Pyra thought, changing her sword Kuo into a rifle mode and began firing at Whis, with Ren and Nora doing the same. John, who doesn't have any ranged weapons, made another attempt at charging towards Whis, only for Whis to dodge once more. That's not possible. Despite all her skills, Whis' reflexes aren't fast enough. Then what? She trailed off, regrouping with her team. Guess I think I know her trick. John whispered to his team, who were all listening while keeping their eyes on the Schnee Harris, who was now slowly making her way towards them while swinging her rapier. Merton asked her playfully. She's making the area around us slower. As Ren, Pyra, and Nora began to empty their clip on Weiss, John dashed towards the Snee, hoping to catch her off guard and hit her, though before he did, Weiss disappeared from his view once more, leaving Team Juniper's attacks useless, though not completely. Were those footsteps? Not quite Ark, but close enough. And there stood Weiss Snee in front of him, her blade at his throat, while his teammates were all on the ground. Yield, Ark, yield, as she said, pushing her rapier harder against John's neck, enough for the pressure to be felt, but not enough to activate his aura shield. I yield, John said, eyes still on Whis' own blue. Wait, why are her eyes like that? He thought with wide eyes. He then asked Britain, if you weren't slowing down the time, then what did you do? Victor, Wishney, Linda's voice ran out. Something more extremer than that. With that, the Whis made to move towards the group of students who all saw exactly what happened. That's the quickest match yet, Velvet commented, while not so discreetly munching on some crackers. And most cheaty power yet, Coco pouted beside her, before grabbing some crackers from Velvet. Hey, do those things have names or something? Coco asked Naruto, who turned his head from Crescent to look at her, making her suddenly nervous. Vizike to ask, that is, Lord Naruto. They do have names, except Ruby's suit. Naruto made to answer, only to be interrupted. Crimson Maiden, that's her name, Ruby said, patting her armor, which is now in the shape of a medium-sized box. Crimson Maiden. Yang's gift is called Dragon Slaying Magic. Blake's cloak is called Invisibility Cloak. And finally, Whis' skill is called Forbidden Baylor View. Naruto continued, unperturbed by the sudden and somewhat rude intrusion. He suddenly kissed his wife on the cheek, who was still draped over his shoulder. "You're rude." Ruby only blushed and continued to play with her daughter, though she did nibble on his cheek. "How do you think your parents will react when they see Crescent?" Naruto asked, ignoring the ongoing spar in favor of playing with Crescent's small hands. Daddy'll faint probably, though Mama'll probably be just surprised," Ruby replied, taking one of her daughter's hands and placing it on her face, proceeding to motorboat it. Crescent only giggled and pulled her hands away from her parents, but not before poking the noses. "Boop! That'll definitely faint," Yang said, fiddling with her scroll. "And they'll probably fly over here as soon as possible. Just sent him the video of our newest family member." "You shouldn't have done that," Blake said from her spot reading a book, ignoring the ongoing match. She was currently wearing her cloak inside out. "Your parents would only get on Lord Naruto and Ruby's case." What Blake said made Yang feel guilty and look at the trio, only to be taken aback at what she saw. There was Whis Ni, the coldest, pun intended, a person she saw, cooing at the little robot girl. Who would have thought Whis' weakness were cute things? Yang thought. A ringing from her scroll derailed her train of thought. She answered it before bringing the device to her ears. "Hello, Yang speaking. Who's this?" "Guess who?" a familiar jovial voice said. "This is about the video, isn't it?" Yang responded to Summer Rose, someone who's practically her mother. "Mm-hmm. Now," Summer paused. "Now what?" Yang urged on. "Let me see my grandkid." End of chapter 7.